It's time to play. Graham's got the tea and the hot buffet. Movies roll lights flash all day. Time entertainment TV. Where the fun and the facts agree. Sit back, relax, and you'll see. Time entertainment TV.
All right, all right, all right, all right, all right, all right. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Listen, we've got a lot of information to go through, but a short time to do it. Make sure that as you all are coming in, you are hitting that like button. Please, please, and thank you. Please and thank you. And if you like what you see and you like what you hear, make sure that you plan to subscribe to Pam Entertainment TV. Also, if you have been following me for my movie and television reviews, please note that as of January 2026. All of them will be on this channel, PETV underscore reacts. That is PETV underscore reacts. Look forward to seeing you over there. I also was remiss on my last video. I want to thank all of you all. I am over 1,600 subscribers, and I am so very thankful for that. 1,600 subscribers. And it's when you visualize it. I know people, I guess in this podcasting and YouTubing world think, oh well, 1,600 subscribers. This 1,600 subscribers means that if I had rented out an auditorium that held 1,600 people, you can visualize how many people that have subscribed and that are listening to me on and off as they watch these YouTube videos. So I am so excited, and thank you all for 1,600. And again, please tell a friend, tell a kin, tell a coworker that I'm over here making these videos. Tell them what I do so they can come over and we can talk about this. All right. So let's get into this. Now, what are we talking about today? Ooh, child. I learned over the weekend that baby, we may have another incidence of fraud going on in there in Minnesota. Now, one of the things that's bothering me about Minnesota is the fact that they have not did their due diligence on these checks and balances. They've not done their due diligence on these checks and balances. So, because they haven't done their due diligence on these checks and balances, there's just a lot of issues and a lot of problems going on. Now, let's get into this and let's go over what's going on. Over the weekend, this young man that you see on my screen, his name is Nick Shirley. He conducted an investigation of daycare centers and daycare centers, whether they're for children or for adults. He's also conducted for their home health services. He went into the Somali community, and let's be very clear about certain things, because people are saying, oh, well, I don't understand. The Somali community is a closed community, meaning that when you go into the Somali community, they're going to be standoffish with you. I'm not saying that they don't have nice personalities or anything, but they are a closed community. So it's not like they are in the middle of it's not like they are inviting or welcoming, because as I've heard a lot of, particularly the young folks in the Somali community that talk and do lives on TikTok, if you're not Muslim, they don't fool with you. If you're not Muslim or follow Islam, they don't fool with you. So that's what I mean by closed community. So are the people nice? I don't know. But I do know from listening to how they run their lives on TikTok, they're a very closed community, and they're very serious about anybody in their community going off and talking to or being with or anything within their community. They'll excommunicate them in a minute, child. And again, that's for me listening to them on their own lives over on TikTok. But anyway, as we go on, he did a video. Now, he has a 40-minute video. Let me pull this up real quick. And we're not going to go over because again, this is his video and you could go over to his. We're just going to go over his introduction that he had within his introduction because it is he's very clear in this introduction what exactly he is looking at and doing. So let's do that. Let's go to his introduction. Y'all got so many screens open, child. All right, so let's do this. Let's go over his introduction and then we'll come back and we'll talk about it. We're not going to go over the whole thing. I am going to go over some things that he's going to show in here, but we're not going to go over again because, again, this is his video and you would go subscribe to him if his kind of content is what you want. But I'm just going to go over his introduction real quick and we're going to talk about it.
Hello, we'd like to ask where the money's going. What do you guys think about the fraud that's taking place here in Minnesota?
I don't think anybody is enabling fraud to happen.
Hold Governor Walz accountable for this.
What was this money spent on? 1.26 million. What was that money spent on? There aren't any kids.
Answer the question. Are there children? There's no children inside this building.
Potentially the largest fraud scandal in U.S. history is taking place in Minnesota as literally...
Did y'all see that? I thought this was a very good graphic. Let me see if it'll come back up.
Are there children? There's no children inside this building.
Potentially the largest fraud scandal in U.S. history is taking place in...
Look at this. So this is a spreadsheet from what they're showing. And these are the home health. This is the provider. And this is the dollar signs, the claim control numbers and all of this. This is the dollar signs of how much they are. You got $461.94 talking about the services that they performed. It looks like on 7/26/24. But this is just coming from the information that they received from the Minnesota Department of Education, who's administrating this education program. Okay.
Minnesota as literally billions of dollars.
And this tally right here, this $18 billion tally, this $18 billion is they're still going through because there's more fraud stuff going on. And I'm going to go over most of it. But $18 billion, I don't think is the half of it. Or later on in his video, Nick Shirley and the guy David sit down and they talk. And one of the things that was interesting to me that in I think it was like 2022 or 2024, the state of Minnesota had a surplus of $18 billion. As of 2025, they are in the negative $24 billion. And they're saying that a majority of that deficit is because of fraud.
Have been funneled through Somali-ran fraudulent businesses. So much fraud, it could actually almost replace the entire GDP of Somalia. These fraudsters have worked hand in hand with the Minnesota government as they enabled billions of dollars to be given to fraudulent businesses underneath welfare purposes. Some of this money eventually landed in the hands of terrorist groups in Somalia like the Al-Shabaab, and others enriched themselves all at the U.S. taxpayers' expense. And in this video, we will break down all of the fraud from start to finish, from going to the fraudulent businesses and confronting the people who are making millions of dollars from the government. And we will...
So that's where I want to stop his video. And again, go see him. Now, like I said, I like the information to come, and I don't care where it comes from the left or where it comes from the right or where it comes from the center. Information is information, and people are putting information out I'm appreciative of it. And that's good. I'm glad to hear that. Oh, well, thank you, John. Thank you for the dollar contribution. I really do appreciate it. Hello. What is train? Okay. Some of y'all could write some of the serious thing, and that's wonderful, but we're going to talk about it today. Now, my introduction to all of this information that we were getting ready to talk about, my introduction came a few weeks ago after finding out about the Feeding Our Future fraud case. Now, currently, they have convicted several people on that case, but apparently they have at least 50 to 60 defendants at this point. So you have the Department of Justice at this moment working on that. And then there in September, there was a young lady from the Somalian community who has been accused of fraud, Medicaid fraud via the autism programs that they have over there. So we're going to hit some of these types of programs, just kind of go over them and see tell you all what's going on. And we're going to also talk about what Minnesota knew when Minnesota knew it, and some of the reasoning as to why. So let's get into it. So let's get into the feeding our families, feeding our future fraud. So if you remember, back during the pandemic, when the kids were out of school, the federal government sent money down to the states to assist because kids were having to be schooled. Well, basically, they had to be homeschooled, so they had to do a lot of virtual learning. And the thing that was interesting that was happening with a lot of virtual learning, and that a lot of us understand and know, that for some of the children that come from impoverished families, sometimes the only good meal that they get is a meal that they have at school. So sometimes they may get breakfast at home, sometimes they may not. But having a good school lunch helps with the learning and things like that. Some school programs, depending on the state that you live, they offer they offer breakfast and they offer lunch. And so you have that going on, and that's fine. I don't have it, I'll just tell you just like this. I'm not that person that has an issue. Feed the kids. I don't even care if the parents have the means at home to pay. Feed the children. You got them in school for, you say it's mandatory for them to be in an education, for a certain amount of hours, a certain amount of day. Usually school systems have children in school for at least 6.5 to 7 hours. Feed the children. If you ask me, I think that all school lunches should be free. Oh my gosh, that's a social. I don't care. If you got children in school for 6 and 7 hours, I don't know why, as a populace, we would be upset and be mad about making sure that children are fed. I would never begin to understand that. Feed the kids. Very important to make sure you feed the children. So initially, let's get to the first one. So here we have feeding our family. So here is an article from back December 2025. And again, I was telling you with the feeding our future, that case is still ongoing because at the last count, I believe they had like 60 defendants. I know that they've convicted, as you see my thumbnail, these people right here. That's on the thumbnail. These are the people, a couple of those people have been found not guilty, but a majority of them on that thumbnail have been found guilty. So there are more. Now on that thumbnail, I do not have this woman right here, who I feel like is who is one of the masterminds in it. And her name, let me share my screen. Her name is Amy Bach. Her name is Amy Bach. She was the one who was the head of the nonprofit organization. She was the one that went out and recruited all of these people who we see that have been convicted. Her and her partner, they were the ones that were recruiting all of these people into all of this, recruiting the people that were used from the grocery stores, from the restaurants, from the community centers, and all of this other stuff. So this woman right here, Amy Bach, who founded Feeding Our Future nonprofit in 2016. Okay. It said here for years that the Feeding Our Future operated modestly, handling roughly 3 million to 4 million annually in federal child care nutrition reimbursements, according to the prosecution. And then that changed during COVID-19 when emergency rule changes loosening oversight and allowed sponsors to submit claims without normal verification. And this is where I have the issue and the problem. I don't have any problems with people opening businesses and being providers, but when the state or the feds, they loosen these restrictions, fraud is always abound. The looser the restrictions, the more fraud you're going to find because there's no oversight. No one is coming over to check all of this stuff, as we find out later on. So I just wanted to show you this picture. This is from the Feeding Our Family. Like I said, she was one of the people that were convicted because I think from the whole program, she was caught with, I think, there's no need to think. So this is her. She purchased these two houses that they show here. And I want to say that she purchased the two houses. She purchased some houses overseas, some like a beachfront property. And I want to say, don't quote me on this, but I think that she had pocketed anywhere from $10 to $15 million of the money. Here is her standing by her car, her Rolls Royce. But let's get into this Minnesota news story. They're going to be talking about some of the other people that were that they're prosecuting or have prosecuted.
This holiday season. At U-Haul.
We'll let the commercial play through. And so we're still talking about the Feeding Our Future scandal.
More people have been charged in connection with massive fraud schemes in Minnesota. The Justice Department accusing these suspects of making various housing and medical claims reaching upwards of $6 million. Here's the prosecutor.
Minnesotans and taxpayers deserve to know the truth of the fraud. The fraud is not small. It isn't isolated. The magnitude cannot be overstated. What we see in Minnesota is not a handful of bad actors committing crimes. It's a staggering industrial scale fraud.
I think it's so important for him to say that people are trying to minimize it. That should not be minimized. Here to discuss it, Fox and Friends Weekend co-host Charlie Hurt.
Because here's my question, and y'all help me out with this. It was a RICO for Sean Combs and all of the stuff that he did. Why is this case not charged as a RICO? Once again, it was a RICO case with Sean Diddy Combs with all the stuff that he did. All the information that they pulled out, they charged him with a RICO. I'm wondering why. I'm wondering what the criteria would be, because obviously you have a massive ring of people committing fraud. You also have a massive ring of people buying property and all these other stuff with the fraudulent money. And also, you all are also, now, I don't know if the federal government is doing this, but they are looking into the fact that money may have gone into the hands of a chaos organization or a terror organization. Gone into a foreign government or anything like that. So I'll have to go back up and beef up on that. But it just seems like with all of this stuff that's going on and the number of people that you all have committing this fraud, there should be some. And then my next question is, who are the government officials that need to be held responsible for this? Because it's one thing for the people who profited from this fraud to be on trial, but it is also another thing that we are not hearing about the government officials who understood and knew that there were issues and problems. And I'm going to go over some information that I have talking about these government officials knew. We're talking about government officials had knowledge that something was amiss as far as any type of fraudulent stuff. 2018, 2021, and then 2022, 2023. So it's very important to see what's going on with all of that mess, because I think exactly that bothers me. That bothers me because I don't care if you're Democrat and I don't care if you're Republican. If you're committing crimes, you are committing crimes. Now, in my community, you commit a crime, you best believe you are going to trial. They're going to find out that information that you're doing probably in weeks. And even if the government oversight was laxed, they would have pulled this amount of fraud. And I'm going to go in there. Thank you so much, David. I'm going to go in here and talk to you why that this is an issue and a problem. Because we understand that the Democratic Party is their greatest fan base right now are immigrants. And so they are doing everything that they're jumpstarting on everyone who is an immigrant. They're doing and they are that protected class, so to speak. I don't know exactly how to call it, but they favor a lot of immigrants. And there's a lot of immigrants that are in Congress that are Democrats. The Democratic Party, all of their messaging has been around been around immigrants. And what's frustrating is they're acting as if immigrants can't commit crimes. And if they do commit crimes, it's us being xenophobic if we say anything. But I'll get into that a little later. So let's go into the next one. And so the next thing that we've got federal prosecutors charging. Let me share my screen. We've got federal prosecutors. They charged the first person in the Minnesota autism fraud investigation. Now, this investigation has been going on, and again, it's involving Medicaid and healthcare services and things like that. Because all of these fraudulent stuff is coming from Medicaid and the USDA. And so what we're seeing with this autism case is that we'll go over from the Minnesota Reformer. It says a 28-year-old woman was charged with wire fraud Wednesday for what federal prosecutors allege is her role in a $14 million scheme to defraud Minnesota Medicaid autism treatment program. The first person charged as part of what is believed to be a wide-ranging investigation. They have charged Asha Farhan Hassan for what they say is her role in the theft from the state's Early Intensive Developmental Behavioral Intervention Service Program, which is supposed to assist people under 21 with autism spectrum disorder. The Reformer first reported the autism Medicaid fraud investigation last year. They say Hassan used her business to defraud the federal government, the federal child nutrition program that was at the center of a massive pandemic era food aid scandal known as Feeding Our Future, according to court documents. They said that Hassan's attorney said that she will plead guilty to the charge. Ms. Hassan is someone who genuinely wanted to help people in the community with programs, and I do believe she got into the business for the right reasons in her heart. But at some point, the billing got out of control, the fraud started to happen, and it snowballed quickly. I don't have no proof of it, but you could best believe that she's probably the face, but she is not. She's probably the face of the operation, but I don't believe that she is the mastermind behind the investigation. Because again, who was doing the billing? Hassan and Smart Therapy paid monthly kickbacks ranging from $300 to $1,500 each month to the parents who enrolled their children with Smart Therapy, according to courtroom documents. And here's the thing that I want us to understand, because people want to, people want us to get things. Remember, I told you at the top of this live that the Somalis are a closed community. So who were they paying? Because earlier this year, when they were reported, they were saying that there was a high tick of Somalis having autism. That jumping up from maybe 0.01% of the population to almost 28-30% of their population, their children's population, that they have autism. Smart Therapy quickly became one of the state's biggest autism treatment providers. Smart Therapy also employed 18 to 19-year-old relatives with no experience related to the treatment of autism and had no formal education beyond high school, according to court documents. Now, these are people who you're giving this therapy to. And you remember when you talk about earlier this year, they were a couple of months ago, where they were talking about certain degrees that they were going to say that weren't professional. And some of these particular degrees that they're talking about downgrading from being professional. However, you have to have a degree to even go into this. You're talking about occupational therapy. You're talking about behavioral therapy. You're talking about all of those things. You need a degree to perform those services. And again, this comes with no government oversight. Where in the world was the state of Minnesota when all of this was going on? Smart Therapy obtained $14 million from 2019 to 2024 from Medicaid. The Reformer reported in 2024, and this is important, that a former supervisor at Smart Therapy made repeated attempts to report what she says was negligence and fraud to state officials. Because here is the thing, what's kicker? Because in Minnesota, apparently there is a law that once a government official becomes aware of illegal activity, they are supposed to report it and it's supposed to be investigated. Now, the wording here is suspicious to me, but it makes sense to me that she made repeated attempts to report it, and they possibly wasn't going to take they possibly didn't want to take her report, but they're supposed to. Growth of spending in the Minnesota autism program exploded in recent years. The number of providers who are supposed to diagnose and treat people with autism spectrum disorder has increased by 700% in 5 years, climbing from 41 providers in 2018 and 300 in 2023. How many children in the state of Minnesota has been diagnosed with autism. A 700% increase in 5 years. That's a lot of kids. And this is her connection to feeding our family. While allegedly defrauding the autism program, Hassan used smart therapy to submit fraudulent claims to Feeding Our Future, according to court documents between 2020 and 2021. Hassan claimed to serve nearly 200,000 meals to children in smart therapy, for which she received $465,000, the document said. These people were robbing the state of Minnesota blind. Robbing these people blind. A mess. So let's talk about this impact of this. So we've talked about Nick Shirley's investigation into possibly fraud with the Somali community and with daycare and daycare centers. When he went and he did his investigation, as you watch his video, he didn't find a single child in daycare. Not a single child in daycare. Middle of the day, when people would be working and have their children placed in daycare, they were not in daycare. And then you had, and here's another thing that if you watch watch his documentary, his video, the paperwork shows what the vendors, those Somali vendors, submitted to the state of Minnesota, is that you had several businesses with the same address. And so when you saw him go to this address, so I understand about office suites. So you go to 800 Office Suite Circle and you walk in, and this would be a building that has several businesses in it. In this building alone, when they were talking about daycare centers, you have 2 daycare centers, same address, just different I guess EIN numbers and things like that they put to the state. One side, I think a combination of both of them, they were supposed to be able to be servicing 120 children. And yet when you went in there was not a child to be found. Not a child to be found. But they're billing as if all these children are there. So let's talk about this impact and compare us what they did and how that affects, because what that affects is the people that actually needed the information, needed the funds. Because again, the funds are like how much funds is there, that's it until they get it re-upped. So listen to me again. So they claim, this is from the Feeding Our Future, that they served 91 million meals. And they estimated that only 3% of the funds used were for food. They claim that they were feeding 5,000 to 6,000 children a day. And they topped out at only 40 people per day at the sites. Exactly. Fraud factory. So let me explain to you how that is. You have, now, if I can remember it now, I will tell you, do not hold me to the number of the vendors. This is just an example of how it would look like. You're saying that you're feeding 5,000 to 6,000 meals. And this is per day. You've claimed that you have fed 91 million meals. That means, let's look this up real quick so we can be very clear. Yes. And you listen to this guy. You remember the guy that they were parading that was running for mayor of Minneapolis? You remember that guy? He was the person that introduced the bill into state about making sure that vendors are paid quickly. He was the one that administered that bill, and you know that the oversight wouldn't be so bad because of the fact that his wife owned one of these companies. And so he was actually benefiting. He was going to benefit. Now, he claims that his wife no longer does that or doesn't have anything to do with it. But you as a government official can't introduce a bill that you know is going to directly benefit you. Now, he lost as mayor, but I'm just telling you, when he was running for mayor, he was a congressional person in state legislation up there in Minnesota. Oh, it runs real deep. And again, we're going to talk about that a little bit, but let me put this up here because this defines it to me. And this is why I can't understand why all of this wasn't considered to be a RICO case. But let's continue. So they're claiming that they were feeding 91 million meals, right? 91 million meals. Give me one moment. $91 million meals. Minneapolis population, total population, is around 430,000 people. Let me show it to you because I just Googled it real quick. You see right here? The population of Minneapolis is 428,000 people. Now, it's my understanding that they were using different vendors and different things from different cities. Don't get me wrong. I am aware of that. But they're basically saying, now mind you, that's a total population. That's not the population of school-age children. It says here, Minnesota, this whole state has they have 960,000, I'm going to say 961,000 children, school-age children between 5 and 17. 960,000 school-age children. To feed 91 million meals, they probably would have had to feed every school-age children, because every school-age children didn't qualify for every school-age children didn't have this service. I don't know. Some probably took advantage of it, some didn't. I know in my state, they were giving the parents a voucher that they could go to the store and then they can purchase lunch meals and things like that. And they had to give, fill out the form, give the receipt back to the school or whoever they were giving it to. They put out more meals than the entire population of school-age children could eat. When they only actually were feeding 40 people a day. It's supposed to have been used for child nutrition, but they're sitting up here with luxury homes. And look at this. Here it is. Here it is. Here you go, Sky. Sky is keeping up. Thank you so much. And make sure you all subscribe. $120,000 in bribes. They got beachfront property in Kenya, property in Turkey, luxury homes. And Amy Bach is charging administration fee. She got 18. Here's that. I knew it was a number. I saw 18. $18 million alone. Fraud. But I want to go back up here because I'm going to go ahead and go over this particular information right here. So during the Feeding Our Future trial, there was some evidence uncovered. And on what the evidence uncovered is this, is that the legislature auditor, the person who audited the thing, had uncovered how deep, as far as the administration failures went on. And so let me go over that. Well, let's go back over the human cost. So remember I told you the defendants were purchasing $500,000 apartments in Nairobi and luxury vehicles. Families in Minnesota were generally struggling to find food during school closure. So these people are pocketing the money. Now, different states did different things. And like I said, the state that I live in, as my friend was telling me, is that they got vouchers, if I'm not understanding it. And if you live in Alabama and that's incorrect, y'all correct me. But they, you buy the food. I think it was you had a form to fill out. You got a voucher to go to the store to purchase the food, to bring the food home. I think you had to give them a receipt and go on. But I think it was a finite amount of money that you had to be able to purchase the food. And I can't tell you if it was for the month or if it was per week. I can't tell you that. The federal prosecutions allege that at many sites, only 3% of the millions in funding was actually spent on food. That's all you needed. You probably didn't even need that much because of the fact that you were only serving about 40 to 50 kids a day. The rest was funneled into shell companies or personal gain. On-site site surveilled by the FBI claimed to serve 6,000 meals per day, but investigators observed an average of 40 visitors. To serve 6,000 meals per day, mind-boggling. It would have to be takeout. You know what I'm saying? They have to prepare the meals and then take it out because there's no facility that's going to be able to hold that many people per day. This means thousands of slots for hungry children were being falsified, while those children were left without the support the government intended to provide. School districts struggle. While Feeding Our Future claimed impossible numbers, the St. Paul Public School nutrition director testified that her department had to use a fleet of 300 buses just to reach kids at legitimate pickup locations. She noted that if any other group had been feeding massive numbers of children in that area, she would have seen it, but they were nowhere to be found. Bang. Here's the evidence of administration failure that we're going to talk about. And this is part of what of the problem. So this lady right here, Judy Randall, was tasked with the investigating and going through and doing the audit. And this is what she found. She says that in the June 2024 Office of Legislative Auditor report has perhaps your strongest source for administrative failure. It implicitly states that the Minnesota Department of Education, right up in here, created opportunities for fraud. They ignored 30 plus warnings between 2018 and 2021. And you remember I told you all earlier that Minnesota has a law that if a state official knows that there's something illegal going on, it is their duty to report. And then after they report it, it is their duty to investigate it. Let's get into this. Ranging from kickbacks to ghost sites. The auditor found MDE's response was inadequate and of limited usefulness. Here's one of the uselessness of things. The investigate yourself policy. the Investigate Yourself policy, they actually asked Feeding Our Future to investigate the complaints against themselves. Where do they do that at? They asked the folks committing the fraud to investigate themselves about the fraud. And what do you think Feeding Our Future did? What do you not laughing, ha ha. I'm just laughing like this you could not even structure this in a good Hollywood movie. Yes. Yes. Zero, this is what was killing me. Zero in-person visits, despite having the authority to do so. The Minnesota Department of Education could not prove that they visited a single Feeding Our Future site in person during the height of the pandemic. And you want to know why they didn't? Because they allowed for Feeding Our Future to investigate themselves. And so when they investigated themselves, we're not committing any crimes over here. This number is startling to me. There was a 2,800% spike. MDE watched the nonprofit funding jump from $3.4 million in 2019 to nearly $200 million in 2021 without performing a manual audit or halting payments. You remember I told you the guy that was running for the mayor of Minnesota. Minnesota, Minneapolis. Was in Congress. This man right here. Let me get his image up. Omar Feta. This man right here. He ran for the mayor of Minneapolis. And when he ran for mayor of Minneapolis, you see his name, Senator Omar Feta announces candidacy for Minneapolis mayor. He was the one that introduced a bill talking about the reimbursement payments and how quickly these payments are supposed to go, yada, 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 knowing that his wife at the time owned one of these businesses. I'm not saying that she owned a business that has been investigated by the Department of Justice. I'm saying that she owned I think it was either a transportation type business or adult care or an adult or a child care business. She owned one of those things in this thing. He says that she wasn't implicated on anything, but he was the one that introduced the bill. And you see how it's running deep. Up there in Minneapolis, they've got the Somali police officers that police their own community. Are they getting any kickbacks? Are the imams and the mosques getting any kickbacks? Because you remember, it's a separation of church and state, and you remember after the civil rights bill was passed, those folks in Congress were trying to dilute the effectiveness of protest within the Black American community. And so they offered this 504 where they're saying churches will make you tax exempt, but you can't talk about politics from the pulpit. Mosque qualifies for that. So can you tell me that money was money funneled into the mosque? I watched a video earlier a couple of weeks ago where the Somali community was doing a like a good press release, or trying to show the press release and how they're good citizens and things like that. But the thing that was interesting to me is the person that was doing the video, most of the people that he was talking who wanted to sit and talk on camera were the people that owned Western Union like businesses, money transfer businesses, where they can facilitate money going to Somalia or anywhere else in the world. And please remember, from this feeding our family crap, feeding our future crap, they had money funneled into overseas. They had money funneled into China accounts. They've got money funneled into Cayman accounts. And they've got money funneled over into Somalia. And one of the, no one has proven it yet, but one of the theories is also that the money that was funneled into Somalia was now. That tells me that they possibly could get a kickback. Let's see. That should have been a complete red flag. Now, let me continue on, because we just going to, let me see where we're at in time. We're doing good. Where is this? David? This is what pissed me off. Because David mentioned that, but the Democrats can't understand why anyone would say that about Somalia people. And you want to know why? Because they pull this racism defense as a shield. So anytime anybody said anything about the Somali community, oh, y'all being racist, y'all are being xenophobic, y'all are being all of this. Court documents and trial testimony from 2024 to 2025 revealed that the fraudster didn't just steal money, they used racial tensions to paralyze state oversight. Because again, Minnesota is supposed to be known for Minnesota nice. And so, in other words, they don't want to ruffle any feathers. But instead of doing the job that they were tasked to do by the citizenry of Minnesota, oh, I don't want to be deemed a racist. How are you racist when you're inspecting? You have the governmental oversight to inspect the stuff that's going on. The lawsuit shield. When the MDE finally tried to pause payments in 2021 due to serious deficiencies, Feeding Our Future sued the state, alleging racial discrimination. Y'all got to see my face. Racial discrimination? Oh? Houseway? Amy Bach? Y'all remember Amy? You remember I showed you Amy? Racial discrimination, how? These are the sites that you said. We gave you the authority to go in and to pull these sites. And now that we're seeing this increase, you're hollering and screaming racism? Islamophobia? Those people should have been in there doing their jobs. Come on, Amy. But I'm more pissed off at the state of Minnesota. And if the citizenry of Minnesota is not pissed off, I'm pissed off for you. Courtroom deception. For years, Governor Tim Walz and MDE official claims that they were ordered by a judge to keep playing the fraudsters. However, in September 2022, Judge John Guthman issued a rare public statement correcting them, clarifying he never ordered the state to resume payments. MDE did so voluntarily to settle the discrimination claims. Liar, liar, pants on fire. You thought the judge wasn't going to out you. You lied. And again, going back to what David Thompson 3415 said, but the Democrats can understand why anyone would say that about the Somali people. So here you have a Democratic governor with a Democratic administration, because the Democratic Party's push are immigrant populations. They've given Feeding Our Future the playbook. Well, just say that you're being racially discriminated against. And that's gonna halt some of this stuff. Testimony on fake claims. FBI evidence presented in the 2025 trial of Amy Bach showed she used fake claims of racism to silence dissent. Fake claims of racism to silence a dissent. Missy right here. You see her. This lady right here. Houseway. No harm taken, but you're a full-fledged white woman. How are you being racially discriminated? You're the person who owns the company. Why are you saying that the state is racially discriminating against you because they want to come in and check your records and then do the on-site visit from the places that are spending, that had a 2,800% increase in funding given to them? One cooperating witness, Hannah Markeegan, testified that Bach was viewed as a, quote, god because she could keep the money flowing by accusing anyone who questioned the meal counts of being bigoted. And I don't know about you all, but have you ever met a very leftist white woman? Karens incarnate. Same thing on the right. Have you ever met a very right-leaning white woman? Karen incarnates. I don't mean no harm. I'm just telling you, I've seen this. I'm speaking from my own experience. The way that they'll tell the manager, or they'll go talk to their cousins that's a judge, or they know people in high places, blah, 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 blah. Or like this lady would keep you in court forever, having to defend. A mess. A mess. There were whistleblowers. Says here, they had a Somali whistleblower, Mr. Noor, a member of the Somali community, posted a Facebook pleading with his community to speak out against the corruption of Feeding Our Future. Trial evidence showed that Amy Bach texted her co-defendant, who is Somali, to get the post cleaned up, and it was removed shortly after. Why is this not a RICO? Because I'm quite sure that that man probably, I'm not quite sure. I can believe that that man was threatened. That's why he took it down. Insider testimony, former site operators testified that they were forced to pay kickbacks to Feeding Our Family employees just to stay in the program. If they refused to submit the fake names and inflated numbers Bach demanded, they were threatened with being cut off. These people in Feeding Our Family stole $250 million. They said that they fed 91 million meals. The groups claim to serve more meals daily in some small towns in the state of Minnesota than the town's actual population. Right? So now you have the autism scandal, and that we're just reaching that we haven't even gone to the tip of the iceberg on that. And that's commingled in this Feeding Our Family. And there's no way in the world if they're going to be investigating these daycare services that they say that they have, there's no way that you're not going to let me believe that they're going to be interconnected with these daycares that have no children in. Now, I will tell you, if I'm going to be fair with the information that I have seen, I have seen there was a guy on TikTok. Yes, they did. Yes, they did. Pocketed a lot of money. Stanley Pelcat 1806. Someone outside the government needs to take control of the government there, and all those involved need to be deported and given long prison terms. Can't believe the taxpayers there aren't pissed off to the fact that all those in office there can be removed. Again, I am interested on that side because, again, Minnesota is supposed to have a law that once a government official, and when I mean by government official, it doesn't matter how high or how low you are in the government. If you suspect or know of any illegal activity or any fraudulent activity, you're supposed to tell the government. Okay. So I'm looking up RICO, and they didn't go across state lines. However, because it's my understanding that they have that people came from another state. Now I don't know if it's all about this particular case or not, but if it is, again, I don't have all the ins and outs, but there's no way in the world that you're going to make me believe it's just an isolated incident to the people to the Somali community just in Minneapolis, when I know that they've got some issues going on down there in Ohio as well. And I know that the Somali population is trying to move south down into the Atlanta area. Now, am I disparaging the Somali community? I'm just reporting what's been going on, and it's going on within their community, because you best believe if it was going on in my community, everybody and their grandmama would be hollering and screaming. Oh my God, the blacks are doing this. You'd be hollering and screaming. So let's recap what we got going on here. So I went over that give me one moment. Let me make sure I have that. Here we go. So I went over the Feeding Our Future, kind of updated you all on what's going on and the information coming from there. And that was the bulk of this live, talking about how all of this happened. I also wanted to go over, we went over tentatively Nick Shirley's investigative video, documentary about him going to the different daycare centers and things like that.
Have you ever seen people flipping houses and say,
he went to the first thing. I wanted to go over here because I wanted you all to see it.
The two of them combined are licensed for 120.
And how much money have these child care centers received?
None of those vans had moved in 6 months. None of them. In 2020,
now he pointed out that, and I wanted you to see that too. He pointed out those vans. Now that's part of that. You remember I told you it was the adult adult daycare, then it was the child daycare, and then there's transportation services. So you have people who provide adult daycare service or adult foster care or services like that, where you would have adults in a home and you would care for them. Then you would have child care services, whether you have a home daycare or you have a facility. And then you would have transportation services. Now, the thing about the transportation services, that is designed to transport people back and forth to medical appointments or whatever appointments, particularly if you are on Medicaid. It is designed to get people to medical appointments because a lot of times you have children who have a lot of medical needs and they have to go see a specialist. And if you live in rural town USA and the specialist is in big town metropolis USA, it's difficult for you to get transportation back and forth. So Medicaid pays people to be a transportation service to get people back and forth to the hospitals or their specialists. And he was pointing out those cars.
of them received 1.3 million in 2021. They got 987,000. In 2022, they got 714,000. That's the last I have for that one. And then the other one, 1.604 million in fiscal year 2025. Fiscal year 2024, they got about 800,000, and in fiscal year 2023, they got $904,059. This place right here. Yes.
We're outside of it.
Well, this is actually 2 daycares are registered here.
Now, I want you to notice something. And you remember I told you that they were a closed community. Look at the people in the back. Now, you don't see truly anybody on the street, but you see these 2 people, and it's going to be important because as soon as these 2 walk up, these 2 they're going to come up from nowhere. And then when you ask them some questions, they don't know nothing.
One of them is Mako, which you see on this sign. The other one is Mini.
Yeah, he's watching in the back. You see how he was watching real clear?
And between the 2 of these child care centers, they're pulling in about $3 million a year. And there are no children. Every facility as you go to, the windows will be blocked out so you can't see in. There's nobody here. You won't see a single child at any of these facilities.
So I wanted to show that particular thing because that was the one that was talking about the 2 daycare centers thing. Now, there was a TikToker that came out and said, well, that is because even though that they're both licensed, they said that the first facility that he was talking about and the payment ended in 2022. He said that facility was payment stopped in 2022 because they had violations, physical violations within the daycare center. And you almost got me until I realized they just basically just changed the name. They never changed or they never took the first daycare out of the system. All they did was change the name. And when they changed the name, they still had the same address. And so that means that you still had people, that daycare center receiving funds, right? Wouldn't the same physical problems be still present? And who in the state went out there to see? Because the address should have clicked somewhere up at the state, like, oh, wait a minute, this is the same address. We definitely need to go back out there. We definitely need to see what's going on. We definitely need to do spot checks because it's the same address. If you've had physical conditions that were dangerous, from 2020, 2021, and 2022, yet in 2023, the same address with just a different daycare name, still doing daycare services. Who went out in 2023 and said, oh, it's okay? But you shut off payments in 2022 to the first daycare. A mess. An absolute mess. They still get the money. And then what they may not be able to recover all of the cash. And that's what's important. You've had a lot of the cash go out. They may or may not be able to recover the deeds or whatever they need to do for all the properties. And here's the kicker. I don't believe the government knows whose name this stuff is in. Some of this stuff and who purchased what. Because again, a lot of this stuff were done with different shell companies. When they were talking about this daycare center, and then I'm gonna leave it here and I'm gonna do a real recap. One of the things that was interesting to me when they were talking about these daycare centers is with this feeding the family and stuff like that, how deep how deep it would be intertwined, how deep it would go. Here's the thing. One man, because again, in Somalia, they can have many wives as they want to. They can marry children if they want to. He may have a legal wife, and then he may have 2 or 3 other women, right? He'll own the transportation service, or he'll own the daycare center or the adult centers or whatever that is. He may own it, right? He then has his wives go up and file for welfare benefits, food stamps, cash payments. So now you've got 3 people, because again, Minnesota don't check houses. And they buy up a lot of homes. So you may have somebody and I think, and people in Minnesota, y'all let me know. You all have a lot of duplexes with basements. So technically you could have 3 separate families living at the same address and all be related. So you can have wife 1 in duplex A, you can have wife 2 in duplex B, you can have wife 3 in duplex C, all of them with 2 children, and they average anywhere from 3 to 5 kids. They go up and get welfare. So now you've got technically 3 households that are getting welfare benefits, getting food stamps. So then you turn around and then he owns and operates a grocery store, a daycare center, and a restaurant. So you're taking the food stamp benefits that you have. You're going to the grocery store that somebody in your community owns. You're using that to pay for the food or whatever that you're getting for the grocery store. Then you're turning around, going over and taking that grocery store food that you purchased so that you can cook up and sell in your restaurant. That once again is community. So mostly the people that are going into that restaurant are Somalis. Then you're turning around and possibly using the benefits or whatever to fund the daycare and buy the food that possibly only your children are attending. But you're charging as if other kids are going. And then you're pocketing the money. This is a perfect example when laws are too lax, when restrictions are not restrictions should be there for a reason. This should not have happened. If you had the proper checks and balance and there's proper restrictions, the address alone would have keyed somebody in the government to go see what was going on. So again, let me recap. We talked about feeding our future. We talked about the autism / Medicaid fraud, and we also talked about possible fraud within within the daycare systems and the the daycare and the adult care and the transportation systems that's going on here in Minnesota that are operated by the Somalis. We are seeing that this network runs deep. We're seeing that this network runs deep. And suffice it to say, you may find that they have manipulated a whole bunch of loopholes. Excuse me. So where excuse me. So whereas some of them probably outright broke the law, you probably have a lot of them that have manipulated the loopholes. And I'm hoping that the government will tighten those loopholes up. But here's the thing that's going on. Apparently, the Somalis are a big voting bloc, but they're not the only voting bloc. What's going to happen is that the rest of the state of Minnesota is going to have to figure out whether or not that they want to be accused of being xenophobic or racist, because if that's what you're accused of, that's what you're accused of. I've been told that sometimes I'm xenophobic because I'll ask a question. Why did you ask that question? Because if you're stealing money, if you're stealing, it doesn't have anything to do if you follow Islam. Doesn't have anything to do with you being Somali. I'm asking a question. And because I ask a question doesn't mean I'm being racist. Because see, I'm the last person that you can pull that card on. That may work with the Caucasian brethren, but that doesn't work on me. I'm not racist. I don't have a system that I can use to hold you down or to keep you from things, even though I know that you're qualified for those things. I don't have no systems like that. And it's not racist to now have to sit down and think about how the United States of America restructured their immigration policies. Because with this level of fraud, taxpayer money, you're going to have to restructure it. And the problem and what you do foresee is that you too have American citizens that are going to that will have to suffer because of the restructuring. Because American citizens can't do this. American citizens will go and qualify for some of these things. Because I know a lot of people that would qualify for some of these services and they can't get into these services because, again, the way the money works is not for an infinity pool of money. It's finite. First come, first serve. You can qualify, but if the money's not there, the money's not there. Or the way the pool is restricted. If the money's not there, the money's not there. Let me get off here. Because as I continue to talk, I get mad. So I hope that all states, I would challenge all states to go back and review and audit their SNAP programs, audit their Medicaid programs, audit the providers. And it's going to be sad because there are some people that honestly make an honest mistake where they were supposed to charge only $500 and they charge $550. You know, some people can make honest mistakes. But when you got people that are literally overcharging by millions of dollars, that ain't working. All right, people. Thank you all so much for watching and listening to me rant a little bit about what's going on up there in Somalia. If you want to take a gander at Nick Shirley's documentary, he's on YouTube as Nick Shirley, and it's the first video that pops up. If you want to find out other information about what's going on with Feed Our Future, just type that in and you will get a bunch of news articles that are discussing all of this, like I just discussed it. Y'all, it is a mess. And again, as American citizens, we're gonna have to stop letting people try to punk us because we're asking questions about our money that we have to, hard-earned money that people have to pay taxes for. Got people here making decisions whether or not to buy eggs or meat, milk and eggs, gas and food. Then you got a population of folks that are stealing millions of dollars. But don't ask me anything, because if you do, you're being racist. And what about Miss Ilhan Omar? You walk into Congress with a negative with a negative income, and now you're worth $30 million. Where'd you get the money, Ilhan? Now, don't mishear me, because I know a lot of congressmen that come in like that. Nancy Pelosi. You leave an office and you are $250 million richer. Houseway. You only make $174,000 a year. Oh, okay. Insider trading. You find out a lot of information before the public does. Because again, campaign rules got laxed. See, before you could find this information out, but now they don't have to post who is donating money and giving money and kickbacks and all this other stuff. There's loopholes in that. And so you see a lot of people getting money from phantom folks. Whereas before you had to pinpoint that. Y'all, please tell a friend, tell a kin, tell a coworker, tell that heifer that you can't stand that I'm over here making these videos. And as always, people, mind your manners, mind your advocacy, and mind your dollars. And with that, bye-bye.